Hello and welcome to the session on Philosophy of Language, Major Areas in the Contemporary Field. Introduction and Truth Conditional Theories. In the last three units, we have looked at the beginnings, the early theories and the mid-20th century developments in the philosophy of language. We have looked at how different theorists and philosophers influence the philosophy of language. We have seen how theories of Bertrand Russell and Gottlob Frege shaped the early theorization of language and meaning. This was later taken up by Wittgenstein, logical positivists, and Alfred Tarski, who were pioneers in the early 20th century. Such theories came under criticism in the later years. By the mid-20th century, writings of W.V.O. Quine along with the later writings of Ludwig Wittgenstein shaped the philosophy of language. The works of Quine and Wittgenstein in the mid-century were seminal. Those writings influenced the later philosophers to actively engage with questions on philosophy of language. There were a number of philosophers, theories, and schools that emerged after the mid-20th century. Those theories determined the directions philosophy of language took in the end of 20th century. The majority of views expressed in the field may be broadly listed into two groups: theories emphasizing truth conditions for sentences in a theory of meaning and theories emphasizing use. The first group is generally called truth conditional theories and the second group is broadly called use theories. Truth conditional theories follow the formal analysis put forward by Gottlob Frege, Rudolf Carnap, and Alfred Tarski. It has its origins in logical positivism, but they were able to eliminate logical positivism's more radical assumptions. Use theories and speech act theory take Wittgenstein's emphasis on the pragmatic aspect of language. They take into consideration the context of speech and intentions of speakers. In this unit, we will mainly look at these two major types of theories. We will try to sketch a brief overview of major figures and issues in each of these. Truth conditional theories of meaning. Truth conditional theories try to explain the nature of meaning. They attempted to explain meaning, conditions of meaning, and the relationship between expressions and external objects. We have already looked in some detail Frege's ideas on language. According to his theoretical position, the meaning of a sentence is determined by two things. They are: we know the meaning of a word when we know the role it plays in a sentence. We know the meaning of a sentence when we know the conditions under which it would be true. There were philosophers who have been following this tradition and they were the most important figures of the 20th century. Frege's ideas were influential and had a great impact on later theories in philosophy of language. It had its own limitations and came under criticism too. But later, philosophers tried to improve his theory and developed this idea in their own theories. Donald Davidson is considered as the major proponent of truth conditional theories. There are some general characteristics for the truth conditional theories and they can be generally summarized as follows. Truth conditional theories argue that significant parts of a language or a linguistic expression should represent the facts of the world. There is a heavy emphasis on ideas of representation and reference. For example, they argue that sentences represent facts in the world, names refer to objects, etc. Sentences are the most basic units of information, so main focus of a theory of meaning is sentences. For instance, an utterance of the name Raj does not say anything meaningful until we point to someone and say, "This is Raj," or assert, "John Raj was born in North Delhi." This view of the sentence as the most basic units of meaning has similarities with the idea of compositionality. Compositionality is the view that sentences are composed of a finite collection of similar elements. These elements can be reused and recombined in novel ways. We understand the meaning of those expressions as contributions to the meanings of sentences. Truth conditional theories of meaning have been based on naturalistic and reductionist semantics. G. Evans in his work has used naturalist ideas, and another major proponent of it was Michael David. Truth conditional theories are closely associated with theories of reference. As a result, people working in this area give much attention to theories of reference too. Referential theories were the most common sensical explanation for the relationship between language and meaning. Referential theories argue that for every linguistic expression, there is a corresponding referent. In other words, linguistic expressions stand for things. This way was heavily criticized by the later theories. It lost its momentum when Russell and Frege started theorizing on the limitations of the referential theory. But by the end of the 20th century, a new wave of interest in forms of reference began. Saul Kripke's Naming and Necessity, which was published in 1980, was a major influence on this new interest in the theories of reference. Hilary Putnam also was major influence for philosophy of language. Putnam, along with Saul Kripke and others, contributed to what is known as the causal theory of reference. In particular, Putnam maintained in the meaning of meaning that the objects referred to by natural kind terms such as tiger, water and tree are the principal elements of the meaning of such terms. According to them, there is a linguistic division of labor. By this, they mean that words have their references fixed. So, for example, the reference of the term elephant is fixed by the community of zoologists. Likewise, the reference of the term mango tree is fixed by the community of botanists. These references are considered rigid designators in the Kripkean sense. Putnam and Kripke suggested that proper names were rigid designators. They are expressions that refer to the same objects or kinds in every possible world. That relation between the name and object is not mediated by some form of descriptive content. Notable recent works in this field include works by P. Kitcher and M. Stanford and Alan Berger. Meaning and use. We will look at the history of verificationist theories in the last couple of units. Verifiability principle was the major doctrine of logical positivism. It argued that an expression becomes meaningful if and only if it can be verified through empirism. It also made a distinction between expressions and that are meaningful in their own terms and expressions that become meaningful only if it can be verified through empirism and experience. This was called the analytic or synthetic distinction. Verifiability principle was very popular in the times it was introduced. Its heavy reliance on scientific tools gave it a good appeal. But as we have seen in the last unit, verifiability principle and the analytics or synthetic distinction was criticized by W. V. O. Quine, who rejected such a distinction. By the mid-20th century, verifiability principle lost its momentum and appeal. But in the late 20th century, verifiability principle was reinvented and revisited by Michael Demet's work. He wrote on meaning and logic, and he analyzed the works of Frege. Like logical positivism, Demet also was concerned with the cognitive significance of a statement. He interpreted Frege in a new way and argued that the real concern of Frege in talking about sense was cognitive significance. Demet argued that a model of meaning is a model of our understanding when we know such meanings. We are sometimes able to express this understanding explicitly. However, a model of meaning could not include such a criterion of explicitness. He placed importance on the implicit knowledge. We can only ascribe such implicit knowledge when we have some sort of observable criteria. Wittgenstein's emphasis on use was used by all the modern philosophers in philosophy of language. Philosophers have also pursued the inferential role or conceptual role semantics put forward by Wilfrid Sellars. According to such theories, the meaning of sentences is the meaning of the inferences we make to and from that sentence. Speech Act Theory and Pragmatics. Speech Act is a term associated with linguistics and the philosophy of language. John L. Austin ideas of locutionary, illocutionary and perlocutionary acts are seen as central to the understanding of the modern Speech Act theory. Speech acts generally refer to the acts that are involved in speech. It commonly includes such acts as promising, ordering, greeting, warning, inviting, and congratulating. Speech acts are analyzed at 3 levels, and they are a locutionary act, an illocutionary, perlocutionary act. A locutionary act is the performance of an utterance. An illocutionary act is central to the concept of speech act. Examples of illocutionary are promising, ordering someone, and bequeathing, etc. John L. Austin introduced the term in How to Do Things with the Words, which was published in 1962. Some commonly given examples of these are greeting, "Hi John," apologizing, "Sorry for that," describing something, "It is snowing," asking a question, "Is it snowing?" Making a request and giving an order, "Could you pass the salt?" and "Drop your weapon or I'll shoot you." Making a promise, "I promise I'll give it back." John Searle, in his work published in 1975, classified illocutionary speech acts the following way: assertive, example, reciting a creed; directives, example, requests, commands, and advice; commissives, example, promises and oaths; expressive, example, congratulations, excuses, and thanks; declarations, example, baptism, pronouncing someone guilty or pronouncing someone husband and wife. In linguistics and the philosophy of language, language was viewed primarily as a way of making factual assertions. J. L. Austin and his interventions led philosophers to pay more attention to the non-declarative uses of language. The terminology he introduced, especially the notions locutionary act, illocutionary act, and perlocutionary act, had an important role in philosophy of language. Wittgenstein's later work sparked interest in the pragmatic dimensions of language use, but some were critical towards it too. They developed another theory which came to be known as speech act theory. This was led initially by the work of John Austin. These philosophers analyzed language by which sentences were tools for doing things. Conventional meaning remained important in these theories. But speech act theories focused on different ways in which utterance might play a role in achieving various goals. For instance, consider the following sentence: "It is sunny outside." This sentence has a lot of possible interpretation. It could be a report. It could be an admonition not to take an umbrella. It could be a lie too if it's not sunny. The way a linguist's expression is used and its interpretation depend on the scenario in which it is put to use. If we have to clearly understand how speech acts, we should address these issues. We should take note of one of its central doctrines, the pragmatics or semantic distinction. There are 2 kinds of information regarding language, and they are called semantic information and pragmatic information. Semantic information pertains to a linguist's expression such as words and sentences. Pragmatic information pertains to utterance and the facts surrounding them. The study of pragmatics does not consider features like truth or the reference of words and expressions. It, on the other hand, put emphasis on information about the context in which a speaker made the utterance. It places importance on how those conditions allow the speaker to express one proposition rather than another. Thus, the pragmatic approach to linguistic expression has a very strong contextual element. As a result, a special attention is made to analyze the goals that a speaker might achieve by uttering a sentence in a particular way in that context and why he or she might have done so. Thus, what a speaker means is often explained by the speaker's intentions. It is based on the idea that the speaker wants the hearer to respond in a certain way and thus to get the hearer to respond in that particular way. However, there may be cases in which these intentions have nothing to do with the meaning of the sentence. For example, consider the following sentence: "It is raining outside." One can say this with the intention of getting you to take your umbrella. But that's not what the sentence means. Look at the following expression: "The weather channel is predicting the rain this afternoon." This expression can be uttered with the same intentions, but this does not mean that those 2 sentences mean the same thing. The concept of illocutionary and perlocutionary becomes important here. The speech is dependent on the intention of the speaker. The success of some intentions is entirely a matter of getting a hearer's recognition of the actual intention itself. These are called illocutionary intentions. Some intentions are above and beyond understanding the semantic content of what is said. Those intentions whose success is entirely a matter of getting the hearer to do something are called perlocutionary intentions. There is a connection between perlocutionary intentions and illocutionary acts. Perlocutionary intentions are achieved through illocutionary acts. For example, a speaker can make you aware of his intentions to get you to do something. "It's going to rain" is an illocutionary speech act, but that will make you realize something about the weather and lets you to think of your umbrella and take it. Speech theories further made a distinction between sentence acts. They are alternate acts, the very voicing or inscribing of words and sentences. Propositional acts, referring to things and predicting properties and relations to them. Illocutionary acts, by which speakers interact with other speakers and the alternates constitute moves in that interaction. Perlocutionary acts, by which speakers bring about or achieve something in others by what they say, for example, convincing or persuading someone. Theorists added two more categories called the meaning intention and communicative intention. Paul Gris and philosophy of language. Paul Gris placed importance on the context of utterance. He suggested that philosophy must consider the ways in which speakers give importance to what is called contextually implicated by them. We have already looked at the Grecian program in Theories of Meaning Part 2. We will do a brief summarizing of the ideas of Paul Gris' ideas here in this section and see how such ideas contributed to the philosophy of language. Paul Gris' analysis of meaning can be characterized by two claims. They are: expressions are to be analyzed in terms of what speakers mean by uttering, and facts about what speakers mean by their utterance can be explained in terms of their intentions. These two theses are known popularly as the Grecian program. Grecian program reduced meaning to the intentions of speakers. Propositional theories of meaning had argued that a linguistic statement becomes meaningful because it expresses a proposition. Gris argued against this and argued that a linguistic expression has meaning because it expresses some concrete idea or intention of the person who uses it. Gris introduced the idea of speaker meaning. This can be defined as the meaning which a speaker on a particular occasion intends to convey to have a hearer. There can be standard meanings for a statement of an uttering, but speakers do not always mean what their sentences standardly mean in the language. So, Gris made a distinction between the speaker meaning and the sentence's own standard meaning. Conversational implicature is a technical term used in linguistics. This term was coined by Gris. A sentence might contain some suggestions within it. Conversational implicature refers to such a suggestion in an utterance even though that suggestion is not expressed or implied by the utterance. A speaker can deliberately use an expression to convey an additional meaning. For example, A asks B, "How was the speech of the principal?" B responds with the following utterance, "Well, I'm sure he was speaking English." This sentence has an additional meaning apart from the original meaning, that is, the principal's speech was confusing. Conversational implicature is one of the central doctrines of the Grecian theory of meaning. Conversational implicatures are assigned based on a series of maxims and assumptions. He suggests 4 types of maxims. Maxims of quantity: make your contribution informative but not excessively so. Maxims of quality: make your contribution true. Maxims of relation: be relevant. Maxims of manner: be clear. Many philosophers working on these aspects of pragmatics argue that these maxims are not sufficient. However, Gris and his ideas are considered as one of the major influences on philosophy of language in the 20th century. Before concluding the topic, let me summarize the core ideas in this unit. This chapter is an attempt to look at the latest developments in philosophy of language. The late 20th century theories in philosophy of language are broadly categorized into two kinds of theories called the truth conditional theories and use theories. Speech act theory is also considered as one of the major developments in this period. As we had already seen, linguistic analysis of the early and mid-20th century were dominated by analytical philosophy. In the contemporary and the late 20th century philosophy of language, analytic philosophy is not strong as it was in the early stages of philosophy of language. However, it remains a vibrant field that continues to develop. Much recent work in the philosophy of language has also been concerned with the context sensitivity of expressions and sentences. There has been a heavy emphasis on context sensitivity in epistemology. The development of the idea of meta-ethics has also contributed to newer trends in philosophy of language. Context insensitivity is beginning to become the predominant mode of natural languages. Hope that you can answer the questions given here. What are the characteristics of truth conditional theories? What are the four stages of philosophy of language? What are Hilary Putnam's and Sol Kripke's interventions in philosophy of language? What are semantic and pragmatic approaches to meaning? What are the different kinds of speech acts? What is Grecian program? Discuss speech act theories. What is Greece theory of meaning? For further reference and reading, you can go through these books. The Meaning of Meaning in Mind, Language and Reality, pages 215 to 271 by Putnam H. 1975. Published by Cambridge University Press, Cambridge. Refining the Causal Theory of Reference for Natural Kind Terms, Philosophical Studies 97, pages 99 to 129 by Kitcher P. and M. Stanford in 2000. Naming and Necessity by Kripke S. in 1972, published by Harvard University Press, Cambridge. Thank you for watching this program. Hope that you have enjoyed this program. Thank you.